I'm going to be doing a portrait of Emily. I'm going to be using the wipeout method. What I'll be doing is putting a sort of tone, or some people call it imprimatura, just like raw umber, black, and then quite terpsy, and just like spread it across. And you want it to be sort of nice, light mid-tone, and so that way that you're able to sort of paint the darks in and then rub the highlights and lights out with a paper towel. I wanted to, since this is a really nice, like, fluid, or more, like, it's a flexible way of getting the drawing and laying in the painting. I wanted to do a bit more of a dynamic pose, so I'm going to have her stand. And this is a really good exercise of like seeing masses, just sort of loosening up and allowing your drawing to be flexible. And so you can really sort of just push and pull the portrait on the canvas while you're placing it. Yeah, so we're going to be setting it in sight size, life size. So I'm going to need my canvas sort of side by side to the model. I like to paint things the scale of life because it just has a bit more of like an impact when you're looking at like a sort of a portrait and it's at the scale of life. So I'm not sure how tall you are. I probably want you on the ground. I'm looking a bit down on you. Yeah, let's see. So, okay, that's nice. Let's try you doing that bit facing the other direction. Okay. And your eyes here. And turn your body a bit more this way. Yeah. Yeah, it would. I want the model to be a bit higher so that I'm not looking down on her. So, what we're gonna do is we're gonna put one platform down, and so she's like at least at eye level or a bit higher. And I'm putting this black over, or this gray, so that the really pale wood doesn't bleach out her shadows. Setting up my easel. I'm gonna have to raise it. Okay. Well, so I like how high you are. It can get really tedious doing the setup, but the more time you spend on it, sort of the easier it will make it for you just going forward from there. So I'm just changing the easel so that we can have the model a bit higher and that the canvas can be side by side. I think we can adjust it after, but let's try that. Nice. So, I'm gonna, if you just step forward a little bit, perfect. I'm gonna lower this a little bit. See your body turn this way, and then yeah, and then your eyes, yeah. Okay, have your eyes turn down that way, yeah. A little bit higher up, yeah. Okay. And then turn your shoulders a bit more this way, yeah. Okay, that's really nice. I'm gonna make a note of this pose. Making sure that the easel is it's like right between her temple and her ear, because I'm gonna be doing a life-size portrait. The height is just a few inches above her head. Could you actually put your arm behind your back? Yeah. And turn your body more this way. Yeah. Okay, so this is a really nice pose. I'm going to take mental note of it, but let's try you facing the other direction. Okay, yeah, this is really interesting. Your eyes, yeah, catching a little bit more light. There's a bit of a highlight, which is really nice. If you could look just a little bit farther up. There we go. There's a nice highlight on her right eye. The left one's sort of diffused in this soft shadow. It's got a great highlight on her eyebrow. I want to sort out her shoulders a little bit. It's like the foreshortening is quite intense, so I might have her turn her body a little bit more towards me. Yeah. And then face just a little bit away again. Okay. Yeah, that's quite nice. I might bring the hair forward. Yeah, I think this is a really interesting pose. So I'm going to go ahead and make a note of the pose and ask my model to do the same. I'm going to actually go down and tape her feet in place. And Emily's standing in a contrapposto, which means that one of her legs is locked and then the other one is bent. And so that sort of like offsets her balance on and puts all her weight onto the locked leg. And so then she has like a really nice gesture to the pose. I'm gonna now tone my canvas with raw umber. I'm gonna get this raw umber, do a little bit of that. A little ivory black, not too much. Ivory black is like really strong. And then I'm gonna get some lead white. And use loads of paper towel. And where's this? Oh. And just get any sort of solvent, sort of turpentine, mineral spirit. This is my brush cleaner. And I actually sort of like to use the paint that's in there. Sometimes if there's enough on the bottom, I'll sort of just like scoop it out. But actually, this is pretty fresh, a fresh one, so it's not that dirty. Sometimes that makes like the perfect nice gray tone. And then I just sort of And this is going to be like a dark halftone so that I can wipe out the lights and then paint in the darks. You don't want it, you definitely don't want it too dark, because then your painting will be sort of like over modeled and, but yeah, I really like this. It's not too raw umbery and not too warm. It's also not too gray and cool. It looks like a good value as well. Not too dark. And then that'll be wet, and so I'm gonna work into that. Very terpsy. Gonna open up the window. Just gonna check. Okay, so if you could step back a little bit. Just, yeah, a little bit more. Brilliant, okay. So, it's in the right position. Very good. So, my canvas is still wet. So, I'm gonna go ahead and get like a decent sized brush. Get a little bit of medium. The medium is Santic and linseed oil, Canada balsam, and mineral spirits. But yeah, so I'm just getting raw. I'm getting the raw umber. A little bit of turpentine. I don't want it to be too wet, so I'm just like wiping off excess paint onto my brush. And I'm gonna go ahead and mark the top of the painting. So, I'm realizing now that it's too light. This is what, if I were to just paint without doing a wipe away method, this would be great in Prematura because I can just paint my darks into it and then paint my highlights on top of it. But I want to be working with the masses of like light versus dark. So I'm going to go ahead and give it a darker tone. Again, just getting some lead white. Raw umber, a little bit of black. Let's see, hopefully this looks all right. A little bit of mineral spirits. You can, we'll be all right. Still a little bit darker. I don't want it to get too warm, so I'm getting more white. What do I do with that? And let's see how this goes. You know, you want to be as prepared as possible, but sometimes you have to make adjustments when the model is there because you need the model as like a reference. So now I got a darker tone, which is closer to a half-tone value rather than like a light tone. So, a bit happier with that. Let's see what it looks like when I wipe it away. Yeah. Now there's a bit more of a contrast between the light and the dark. So you can step back just a little bit. Perfect. Okay. Getting a bit of raw umber. Working the top. Working the bottom of the chin, the neck. I need a bigger brush. Bigger and softer brush. Gosh. And so just getting the tiniest bit of mineral spirit on my paper towel and sort of blocking in the light shape. Squinting a lot, seeing the big shape. Start marking in the shoulders. Tilt your head just a little bit this way, yeah. Just looking at the gesture. Getting the envelope. So the envelope is sort of like the enveloping the big shape of the subject. So really simplified lines, straight lines, sort of, you'll see all these sort of like angle breaks and apexes, but you just sort of pick out the most dominant or crucial ones and make notes of those without getting it too sort of, just keeping it simple, simplified. And doing the wipeout method is a really good exercise in this because you're really forced to squint, look very visually, and just move the light and dark shapes around. Use a brush with a little bit of medium to wipe it away. But you definitely want to make sure not to get like too like terpsy and wet because it will kind of get out of control. It's kind of nice to keep it dry and a bit contained. Could you tilt your head just a little bit more? Yeah, nice. And it's really good just like flashing your eyes back and forth and comparing your painting to the model, and you can just sort of like things sort of stand out to you and you can just push and pull the paint quite easily thinking of the anatomy, the neck, and sort of kind of constructing it, but not getting too caught up in the drawing, still working very visually. And yet, I haven't been using much turpentine, so my painting's still like nice and dry and really thin. So that's how I'm able to just like push these shapes around. Sort of trying to find the jawline. Go ahead and put some shadow in the background. And Emily has like an incredibly delicate like shoulders and neck. And there's a lot of anatomical information in there, but you just want to squint, squint, squint and simplify it as much as possible. Unify. You want to be unifying the information into like a sort of general, bigger shape. Go ahead and get just a slightly smaller brush. A nice soft brush. I got this one here. It's a 4 filbert bristle. And I'm gonna go ahead and make sure I don't have too much turpentine on my brush and get some raw umber. Make sure it's a bit dry. I'm wiping it on my paper towel like this. And I'm gonna go ahead and start locking in some features. So you can tilt your head just a little bit. Yeah, that's great, thank you. Getting that Van Dyke Z on the nose, up to the eye. See that her eyebrow needs to be raised. I'm gonna try and get a dry brush and see if I can sort of push the paint around. It's like a soft sable here. And sort of get the shape of the nose. Place the eye. And then relating the right eyebrow to the left eyebrow. And raw umber is nice to use because it'll dry pretty fast. So you'll be able to start the next day as long as you don't paint too thickly. And it's transparent as well. Trying to place the ear. Again, keep it really soft and simplified, but I'm going to try and place the pit of the neck, looking at the sternocleidomastoid and the collarbone. And looking, so I can see like that there's a lot of foreshortening going on in the shoulders, and so it's all about the angles. And I can see that this angle is tilting not straight up and down, but rather to the right. You can imagine it on a clock, a hand on a clock. It's going to 1 o'clock rather than 12 o'clock. And I'll put my brush up and I'll line it up with the model, and then I'll line it up with my painting and see that they match. And that helps me with my foreshortening, getting angles. So this is a very mass-oriented process. Light and dark. It has a really nice sort of effect. I'm gonna go ahead and maybe try and wipe out a little bit more lights. Trying to maintain a simplicity in the shadows, but getting more and more specific. Not getting too many sort of halftones or anything just yet. Find the contour, the edge of the neck. Now I'm going to go ahead and what I'll do when I'm placing some sort of mark is I'll look up and see where the line of the shoulder lines up sort of vertically with the ear. Same thing with the pit of the neck. I'll go to the pit of the neck and see where it lines up vertically with the eye. So that I can sort of keep track of the gesture and the widths. You always want to be relating everything as a whole. You don't want to have this beautifully rendered shoulder and then have it just be completely severed from the rest of the portrait over off on the left side of or right side of the canvas. Okay. Getting a little bit of variety in the hair. I might go ahead and get a little bit of turpentine on my paper towel. Go ahead and try and find that highlight on the eyebrow. And the highlights are going to help me see proportions a little bit easier. Soften the... Maintaining like a very visual impression. Squinting my eyes, stepping back, and trying to keep everything soft because I'm going to be adding the accents at a later stage when I feel much more confident with my drawing and everything sort of working together. Yeah, super exciting softening. You gotta go in and make marks. Don't be afraid to do that. But make sure that you go in afterwards and do a little softening. And you're softening very sort of thoughtfully, because you don't want to just lose the drawing. You don't want it to become really generic. So you're still drawing while you're softening. So this is a nice sort of soft impression of the portrait I have here. And I wouldn't be opposed to, you know, this was the end of the session. I have all my edges soft, got the general proportions down. Got a little bit of a light effect going, but it's more about just the light and the dark and the shapes. Because what you have to remember is it's going to dry, and so you can always put down more brush strokes on top of it. So if you're not like very confident with the placement of something, it would probably be a good idea to sort of soften it a little bit and come back to it. Hairline should always be really soft.